I think the Blood Angels actually already have 3 pretty fun, decently playable detachments, but with a brand new one coming along with Grotmus, how does this new one stack up against the original 3? Well, in my opinion anyway, pretty damn well actually. I really do enjoy this detachment. I think it's got a lot going for it. I think it looks decently powerful, and I think it looks a hell of a lot of fun. The Angelic Inheritors detachment does force you to give up either the +1 attack and +2 strength on the charge of the Liberator Assault group, the wound rerolls of the Lost Brethren, and the uppy downy shenanigans of the Angelic host. But in return, you get Legacy of the Angel, which is a really fantastic little rule that lets you pick 2 abilities which are called your Angelic Legacy abilities, and you can see those on your screen now, and the 2 effects that you pick will impact all of your character units in your army. So you do have a little bit of option in the start of the first battle round to kind of tailor it to what is going to be the most beneficial to your army and to the match, but essentially anything that is joined by a character or is a character themselves is going to get these bonuses. So it may seem a bit restrictive tied around the characters, but the important thing to remember is that when a character does join a unit, that whole unit becomes a character unit. They gain the keywords, so they do get quite a lot of use out of this. This isn't just going to be your characters that get these buffs, and when it comes to the Blood Angels, they do already get quite a lot of work out of characters. They've got some really good named ones like Mephiston, Dante, Astarath, and Lemates, who are all really solid. But then there's always going to be place in an army as well for things like captains, librarians, judiciaries, sanguinary priests, all that kind of stuff is going to be a good pick for your army. So you can get a lot of your units with these buffs, and it is only really going to be things like small scout squads or maybe small intercessor squads or vehicles and that kind of thing that you are going to struggle to get this on, but it can in general be quite a wide-ranging rule, and the options themselves are all pretty good. Sanguinary Grace allows your unit to shoot and charge after it's fallen back. Carmine Wrath is exceptionally potent, giving you a reroll hit and wound rolls of 1, whilst their appointed hour is super strong for a melee army like the Blood Angels, netting you a reroll to your advance and your charge rolls. Now I personally think that Carmine Wrath and their appointed hour are probably going to be the go-to, but if you are concerned about your units being tied up and locked down in combat by the enemy, Sanguinary Grace could be a consideration. I still think it's an okay ability to have. I just personally think it's going to be the least taken option out of the 3. So it is quite a strong and quite a flexible detachment rule, and whilst, as I said, you do give up a lot to get it in terms of the benefits from the other detachments, it will certainly turn your 3 or 4 or 5 key important character-led units into unbelievably fast and hard-hitting units when they do reach combat. And while I just said reach combat, it is actually worth pointing out here the reroll, hit roll, and wound rolls of 1, that isn't just melee, that is in shooting as well. So this is going to help your ranged attacks on top of just your melee bonuses. So it is quite a nice rule for even as you're advancing up the board and you want to shoot your bolt rifles or your bolt pistols, it will make a small difference there as well. Moving on to the 4 enhancements, you do have a few great options and a couple that are maybe a little bit less impressive, but we do start strong with Prescient Flash. This is only 20 points, and to me it seems like a bit of a steal. It grants the bearer and his unit the Scout 6 inches rule. So essentially giving you a free movement phase to get up the table a bit more, get a bit closer to the enemy, or get a bit nearer to an objective, and just making it that much more easy for you to get a turn 1 charge off or just get onto that objective that you need to. Troubling Visions is the cheapest of your enhancements at 15 points. This one gives the bearer a once per battle ability to have all of the Angelic Legacy abilities up instead of just the 2 that you've chosen. Now, this could be useful if you are locked down and you didn't, for instance, pick Sanguinary Grace just to get that ability up so you can still fall back and still charge. So from that perspective, I don't think it's bad, and it definitely could come in handy when you need it. I just think this one is perhaps sometimes a bit unnecessary, and there are going to be games where it won't really do anything at all. especially as you are already going to have the 2 buffs up that you chose in the first battle round. So the last option is going to be one that you didn't really feel you would need all that often anyway. So just being able to get the 3rd one, yes, it might come in handy, but taking up an enhancement slot and paying 15 points for a maybe does feel like it might be wasted sometimes. Blazing Icon is pricier at 20 points. This makes it so your unit can't be overwatched. That is super strong as you are trying to get up the board, or if your unit is arriving from reserves, for instance, being able to just avoid those big, scary, shooty units that can do damage in Overwatch. Things like torrent weapons or stuff that Overwatch is on a 5+, for instance, that can be hugely devastating to a lot of armies. So being able to just flat out ignore that and know that your squad isn't going to be shot up by the enemy as you are coming onto the board or moving up the board can absolutely ruin your opponent's game plans. So I think this one could be very worth it on the right unit. And then finally, you get the priciest enhancement. This is the 25 point Ordained Sacrifice. This one allows the bearer on a 2+ to get back up after they've been destroyed for the first time. And you come back with 3 wounds remaining, as usual, near to where you were destroyed and not in engagement range of an enemy. It is always a handy trick to have, and it can definitely help you to have a unit come back and keep holding an objective, or just able to come back and mess up your enemy's plans, as you could make a charge in your following turn, for instance. So it does have some utility, and it is also quite reliable on a 2+. So I do think if you have the points for this and you have a character that you are going to want around for as long as possible, this could well be a worthwhile option. On the stratagem front, we begin with the ever popular, although less good now, Armor of Contempt. It's still the same 1 command point to protect you from now a single shooting or fight activation by reducing the incoming AP by 1. It is still solid, it is still good and worthwhile as a defensive strat. It is just less good than it was a few weeks ago. Striker Now for Glory gives a unit in your army sustained hits 1 in the shooting phase. Now this may seem odd considering you are mostly a melee army, but this isn't just on your infantry units, this is just an Astartes unit. So you can put this stratagem on some of your shootier things, your shootier units and your tanks and vehicles, and certainly things like Gladiator Lancers or Vindicators or Predators or even Repulsors and the like will very much enjoy the chance to get some extra hit on their guns. So this can definitely help you to thin out the enemy a bit more as your melee units are rushing up the board towards them. So I do think it is quite a good strat to have on some of your ranged units. Focused Fire is next, and this is, for 1 command point, in my opinion, an absolutely spectacular strat. It grants a unit in the fight phase the lethal hits ability, so it's already pretty good. Getting lethal hits on a melee unit is fantastic, but if it is a character unit, then you also gain Lance. So something like 3 Sanguinary Guard with swords and accompanying a jump pack captain, they could be throwing out just the 3 Sanguinary Guards 12 strength 7 minus 3 AP 2 damage swings with lethal hits, lance, and rerolling hit and wound rolls of 1 in this detachment, which is pretty damn scary and lets them alone kill about 9 marine profiles. So a unit with that said captain could very easily, in my opinion, take out something like a 10-man intercessor squad and quite probably a character that was attached to that unit as well. It is just a very strong stratagem, especially on a character unit. It is going to make a lot of your units just absolutely deadly into infantry. You will be wounding most of them on 2s or 3s at worst, but also makes them much better at punching up into vehicles and those tougher targets too, thanks to the lance you can get. So it is just a really strong stratagem, and one that I think you will be using a lot on things like your Death Company and your Sanguinary Guard. Next up, we have In the Shadow of Great Wings. This is in the enemy shooting phase after they've selected a target. You can pick a character unit that was the target, and then your unit can't be picked as the target unless the enemy is within 18 inches. So you can basically just wait until the enemy's targeted your unit and then be like, nope, actually, you can't target me. It really is the ultimate defensive tool. If the opponent is outside of 18 inches, they just physically can't target you. So anything, in the first turn or 2 of the game, or anything that's staying back onto an objective in your side of the board is going to be so much safer from enemy shooting. And interestingly, I might be wrong about this, but it also doesn't have the caveat that other strats or rules like this tend to have, where it says the enemy can then pick another target after you've done this. So rules is written here, and it might be FAQ'd or I might be misreading it. Do let me know if I am. But this means that you could have an enemy unit target you, then pop this and be like, you can't shoot me. But then their shooting attacks will basically just completely go to waste because they can't then pick another target. So this seems really good for one command point, and I think in terms of keeping your stuff alive, certainly in turn 1, it's going to be absolutely invaluable. Instant of Grace is actually quite a unique stratagem. I think it's really cool actually. It lets you in your command phase pick a non-character model in a unit, and that model gains the character keyword. So of course they then naturally benefit from the detachment rule. Now this is infantry only, so you can't make things like your tanks or dreadnoughts characters, but if a unit of intercessors or scouts really needed some of the detachments buffs that you'd picked, this is a great way to get them on that unit and make use of it for a turn. So it is just a really cool, fluffy stratagem, and I think it is going to be one that you will really get a load of benefit from on those occasions where you need it. It's not going to be one where you need it every single turn, but on that crucial game or crucial turn where you need that unit that doesn't have a character to be re-rolling hits or wounds or re-rolling charges, just putting this on them and getting that detachment buff is going to be huge. And then finally we have Unto the Burning Skies. This is also one command point. It's at the end of the opponent's fight phase. You can pick up a unit and essentially uppy-downy it. So it goes into strategic reserves and then you can bring it back down in your following movement phase. This is only your jump pack units, so things like Sanguinary Guard or your jump pack Death Company, but it is fantastic for objective play. Uppy-downy tricks are so good in 40k at the moment, and so this is just a great thing to get you better at scoring objectives and secondaries and getting onto areas of the board where your opponent wasn't expecting you. But in quite a cool twist with this stratagem, the Sanguinor can have this put on him even if he is in engagement range of an enemy. So he can quite feasibly just drop into combat with an enemy with his miraculous saver ability, fight first, and then the enemy does get to return attacks of course, but then after the enemy has fought, he can just jump back up into the sky and drop down again next turn. It is hilariously funny and it is quite a strong strat to have, so it is just another very useful, quite tactical stratagem to have in your back pocket. Overall, I'm quite a big fan of this detachment. It does have a few big flaws. No advance and charge stratagem is a huge negative for Blood Angels, especially since all the other 3 detachments you have in your codex do have that option in the form of a strat. So that is a massive downside for this detachment. And arguably, you could say it can be less army-wide in terms of the detachment rule compared to something like the Liberator Assault Group buffs. But despite that, I do think it does have some teeth. And if you are going character heavy and you want that kind of thing to be the focus of your army, a few really big, key, important units led by characters, this detachment does bring a lot to those units. So it definitely can be worth it if that's the style of game and the game plan that you are going for. But as always, what do you make of the Angelic Inheritors? And will you be giving it a try with your Blood Angels? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me. But until next time, I'll catch you later, guys.